Good evening, I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
And we're the Scanner Guys. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome to the show. We do this almost every Wednesday, don't we?
Yeah, well, it's been every Wednesday this year so far.
Yeah, so we're here 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time. So tune in, join us.
See, 5 o'clock, if I can find it. There it is right there, 5 o'clock. We're right on the button. We are nothing if not punctual.
Also, hit the subscribe button if you're watching us for the first time and you haven't done that already. Give our video a like as well. We would love that as well. We've got an interesting topic tonight. We're going to be talking about public safety channel infrastructure. The reason why we're talking about this is there's more channels out there than ever.
Yeah, it ain't just dispatch.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, when we started back in the day in this hobby, you know, there was so few channels. And we're going to learn tonight why, and trunking is a big thing with why there's so many channels.
Yeah, when I first got into it, you had a police channel, you had a fire channel, and you had a highway department or public works channel. Yeah. And that was pretty much it.
It was pretty cut and dry.
Yeah, and now it's just like...
Yeah, I mean, that's why, you know, a lot of those older radios that we've looked at only had X amount of channels, because it really... You didn't need 25,000 channels.
Yeah. I mean, I had an 8-channel scanner as my first one, and I actually had a couple 4-channel scanners, which... We're fine back in the day. Now, the 4-channel scanner won't even get me to the local railroad.
Yeah, you just need the space now, and that's the thing. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through the slideshow like we always do. That's usually the first hour of the program. Second portion of it is 30 minutes where we answer your questions, and then we wrap it up by 9:30 Eastern Time. So it's a total package of 90 minutes. So
well, more like an hour and a half.
Yeah, an hour and a half, 90 minutes. It's the same thing, Rich. Let's get underway with the slideshow tonight. So public safety channel infrastructure, and we are the Scanner Guys, and as always, we're brought to you by Scanner Master, of course. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at our social media. So did you know you could follow the Scanner Guys on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at the Scanner Guys? You can check out our blog, thescannerguyshow.com, which is our official website. So make sure you do that. We have t-shirts, hats, mugs available. We're wearing our Scanner Guys t-shirts. You can purchase your very own through our website. Visit thescannerguyshow.com. We have a coffee mug, and we also have a hat as well. So definitely check that out on our official website, thescannerguyshow.com. While you're there, sign up for our newsletter. We periodically send a newsletter. It's great tidbits and so on that we can share with you through email. We don't sell your information, so it'll be safe with us. So definitely sign up for our newsletter on our website as well. So the analog conventional era, this is kind of what you and I were kind of, you know, hinting at. Yep. And this is basically exactly what you were talking about, Rich. Very cut and dry. Police, fire, and highway department.
That was it. And that was what, you know, when you're in the suburbs, that's what every suburb had. You know, it had a police channel, you had a fire channel, and you had a public works channel. And at night, the public works channel was used by the police department because there was everybody else and their brother using the police channel. And that was pretty much what every little suburb of Chicago, of Boston, of New York, of L.A., that's what they all had.
Yeah, I mean, that was how it was for me growing up. You know, the town that I grew up in was Middleborough, Massachusetts, and the town of Lakeville, Middleborough and Lakeville shared the same frequency. It was basically Station M was Middleborough and M1 was Lakeville.
Yeah.
And then each town had their own fire department and on their own channel. And then, of course, they had their own highway departments as well. But they did share the police channel. And then many of the cities or towns surrounding there had their own channel. And it was very cut and dry. Very much what we see here for Hull here.
Well, when I was a kid in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a VHF channel that was used by just about every police department from the lake to the river, which is probably 25 towns. And everybody and their brother was on that one channel, 155.13. And the fire departments had just switched off into a new channel, but before that, there was like one fire channel for the north suburbs, one for the west, and one for the south, and that was, it was pretty good. So there was like 5 or 6 VHF channels was the entire suburban area of Chicago, and now every town's got a million different channels.
The other thing that Plymouth County had and Bristol County in Massachusetts had was a common frequency that was licensed pretty much to all the police departments. They all licensed it. It was 482.3875. It was no repeater. It was just basically a car-to-car. And every town had that programmed in. So if you were right by the border of another town, you could communicate to the other officer if you were within line of sight range from the other town. You could communicate with them periodically, and then I would hear the police officers communicating if they were close to. I knew when they were close to my house because I could hear them. It was a non-repeaterized system. So what we pulled this off of was Radio Reference. This is Hull, Massachusetts, as an example. And a lot of people ask, when Radio Reference, what does it all mean? We gave you some details here. So the type column, you see frequency, license, type, tone, alpha tag, description, and so on. So type, typically in that column, you'll see RM, which means repeater, base mobile, which is a non-repeaterized system where the dispatcher is transmitting off a big tower and the cars are transmitting and their signal will hit that tower. It's more like a line of sight type of communication where it's not where
they call it simplex.
Yes, simplex. And then of course the mobile, which is basically portable and vehicular radios communicating. So that would have been my car-to-car channel, would have had the designation of mobile. And then, of course, FM, which everybody's familiar with, and then FMN, which is, really kind of...
FM,
Yes.
Yeah, originally it was FM for just about everything.
Yes.
And then, I'm guessing, 10, 15 years ago, they went to what they called narrowbanding. And everything from on the VHF band and most of the UHF band, except for the T band above 470, was changed to a narrower bandwidth, and then it was called FMN. And they had X amount of time to finish it. Most agencies did. Low band and T band, for other reasons which we've talked about before, were not required to go narrowband. So that's why on T-band, you'll see sometimes FMN or just plain FM. Both of them are correct. And on low band, it's almost all still just plain FM, and probably will always be.
Yeah, and as Joe said, in 2008 is when narrowbanding started. So I knew when many of the towns switched from wide to narrow, and the audio quality, the distance of the reception went down. And that was great for the toy radio companies because they were able to say, hey, you want clearer audio quality? We've got P25, we got DMR, NXDN. We could hook you up, but you got to buy new radios.
The same guys who narrow-banded the existing channel said, oh, we got something even better if you want to spend some more money. Yeah.
Yes. You don't like how it sounds on narrow? Yeah. We could hook you up. So
absolutely.
So as you can see there's a mode column on the top there, which you see that the police department is FM and then FMN for the fire operations and the public works. So you could also see in that column P25, DMR, or NXDN. So this is kind of a cool overview of Radio Reference. If you don't know what you're looking at, this is kind of what you're looking at in a nutshell there, and then everything else is self-explanatory. The PL tone, the alpha tag, and the description, and the tag kind of explains itself.
Yeah, and if you've got a zip code type scanner, the tag is the service type. If you've got a zip code scanner, so that's where you're going to see that information replicated. The alpha tag is going to be the quick description of the channel, the little one, the short description, and then the description is the full description. So if your scanner is set up to see both, you'll see Hull PD, police operations. Otherwise, you might just see Hull PD.
Yeah, so that's definitely something to keep in mind there. But this was your typical small city or small town. Looking at a larger scale city, that's where you typically would see all of these additional channels. This is looking at the current plan for Boston PD. And as you can see here, there's a whole dozen of channels. Because it's a large city, they break it out into sectors. So there's certain sections of town that's on certain frequencies. And then, of course, there's some talk around channels. Believe it or not, we're seeing more of this now, which we'll show in upcoming slides, of small little towns having a cluster of a dozen or so channels. And you can see here, this is from Radio Reference. You can see that there's a whole slew on the left of your screen of all the police frequencies, and then on the right of your screen, all the fire frequencies. Several channels. We're actually going to kind of go over the structure as well. Why do they have all these channels, and why does the fire department have a dispatch, and then they have a fireground, or they have an operations, or they have a tactical? We're going to dive into that as well. So if you ever wondered why the heck do they have all these freaking channels?
You're going to find out.
That's for sure. So the trunking era. This is what most of us are familiar with now, is the trunking era. This is, what we're in. Don't get me wrong. We still got analog. It's still out there. Analog conventional, you look at Boston. That was recent, that slide. Let me roll back to it. There is some channels that are running digital, but most of those channels that you can see there that have DPL under the tone column are analog. The channels that are digital, which are P25 digital, have a NAC code, an NAC. So there's a handful of those channels, but the vast majority, Rich, is analog still to this day.
Yeah, and same thing with a lot of other big cities. New York City, Chicago, almost everything for the police departments there are analog. Really about the only difference is Chicago Fire has gone P25, but it's conventional. It's not trunked.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how this all will shake up. I mean, you think of it, it's a lot more affordable for a smaller town to go digital than a larger city. You think of how many pieces of equipment a large city has versus a smaller town. It's just it's an undertaking. And usually, like we've talked about before in these shows, as they upgrade the radios, they'll buy phase 2 capable radios and still be transmitting an analog. And it's a gradual thing. You for several years you did a lot of the purchasing for the police department you worked in. It's not an easy thing to upgrade.
No, it really isn't. And we got lucky because we had some grant stuff available to us. So we had phase 2 capable radios on the state and county digital systems, but they also had our analog channels, which we used every day. So we only used the digital stuff to talk to the state or to the county. But for our day-to-day stuff, we're using these phase 2 capable radios in our old analog channels that we'd been on for 45 years.
Yeah, and I mean, if you don't have those grants, it's easy to, it's not easy, but difficult to convince, look, we need to buy XYZ in order to do this,
I would
that,
never have bought those radios, and I would have bought the next generation of analog radios, and because we didn't need them, but the fact that we got them, we're going to get them.
Yeah, and some communities probably out there are not that lucky to be able to get all those grants. So let's take a look at the trunking era. So there's a whole slew of channels. Now, mind you, this is a, let me just say, probably a medium-sized town that I pulled this from. Medium-sized town. Now, this is from a trunking system. I'm going to widen this out, Rich, so everybody can kind of see. Look how many channels there are. And the blue, I've put a blue bar so you could see all the channels that are in the list that are police. And then you look at all of the channels that are fire. Look how big that bar is.
Oh, yeah. Well, they've got like 20 different fire, or 10 or 15 fireground channels, and then one channel for each firehouse. I assume that's probably for fire alerting, or an individual channel for each fire department or each fire station. But I mean, look at the police channel. You got 2 dispatch channels, and you got 7 TAC channels. I mean, how many different operations are they going to be having?
I know.
To have 7 TAC channels.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the thing too with this is just looking at the database. This was one. I'll get rid of that. Let me remove our bug off the thing too, so you can see that full screen. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I was just looking at this, and I said, this is a town that's in North Carolina, and I was just like, holy crap! I understand. This town's, it's probably decent size. Yeah. But like you said, Rich, when are they ever using all 7 tactical channels?
Yeah, it's probably because they had to fill up channel spaces in the radios, or hey, let's prepare for the future. Maybe it's a growing town. Maybe they'll grow into it. But unless it's something like that, it's probably a little bit of overkill. But the thing is with trunking systems is you can add as many talk groups as you want. It's just how many are active at any given time, which is going to determine the capacity of the system.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty decent. I want to let you know something, Rich. So there's another section on radio reference for this town that's almost as big as this, and it's the highway department and all the other services. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah. And like I say, it's either room for expansion, or they figured, okay, we've got the capacity, let's do it. You never know if we're going to need it.
So I've broken this out to police, fire, and other. And as somebody was, I believe it was Chris asking, event channels. So this is great, to have these event channels in case, they're having something going on in town, like a street fair or something like that. And, they can either loan out radios to officials that are running that street fair. Yep. The police department and the fire department can monitor those channels and communicate accordingly. Yeah.
And those are great channels so that the fire department can talk to the police department, can talk to the public works department, can talk to the highway department.
Yeah, and of course, whoever's running the event, there could be a information area. Or like a carnival, for example, whenever they have like a carnival, and there's a main section where you could go if you lost somebody, or there's a child lost. They can communicate that over the radio that we're looking for, and then all those eyes and ears are able to be looking.
Well, the city I live in is very similar in layout to this, and they have a couple police channel, dispatch channels, a few TAC channels, and such. But the event channels are used by the police department to talk to the fire department, but they're also used for big events. We have a marathon race, we have all that kind of stuff. But they also use those as car-to-car channels, or when the police department's real busy, they'll move the dispatch off to one of the event channels just because they've got it. So you never know what you're going to hear on it.
So very much like what we showed you in the previous slide, this is yet again a radio reference screenshot here. The things to keep in mind is in the mode column. Mm-hmm. Now, in this particular screenshot, there's no A's. It's all digital. Right. So the A is for analog, D is for digital. I feel like I'm on Sesame Street. T, if we see any T's, that means TDMA phase 2.
Right.
So let's say, for example, many of you out there, let's say you were looking at Radio Reference and you saw XYZ trunk system, TDMA phase 2. Now, if this was listed, these talk groups in that system, and you have a phase 1 digital scanner, you would still be able to hear these talk groups as long as there's not a T. If there's a T in the mode column, that means you won't be able to monitor it with a phase 1 digital scanner. With a phase 2 digital scanner, you'll be able to monitor whether or not they're phase 1 or phase 2.
Right. And that's the thing is with these phase 2 systems, even though they're identified as phase 2, that's why, like you said, you got to look at that mode column because your older phase 1 only scanner may still work. We do recommend if you're in the market for a new scanner and you have a P25 system, just start off with a phase 2 capable scanner, even if it's phase 1 now, because if it's phase 1 now, it could go to phase 2 at almost any time, especially if it's already set up as a phase 2 system. Then it's just a matter of programming. If it's a phase 1 system now, it's just a relatively simple upgrade to make it phase 2 capable. They got to replace some radios, do some programming, and that's pretty much it. So if you're going to buy a radio, buy a phase 2 right now anyways, just to be ready for it.
Yes, that's for sure. And the other thing, while we're going down the list, you may occasionally see M in that mode column. Right. That basically means mixed digital or analog. Yeah. So you may see that occasionally with some systems. And then the dirty word, not the F word, the E word. Yeah. So anytime that you would see the E next to, let's say, DE with a capital E, that means they're full-time encrypted. Right. If you see a D with a lowercase e, that means there's part-time encryption, or maybe one side of the conversation may be encrypted. Let's say the dispatcher end of things, or
that can turn encryption on and off, or the dispatch is encrypted and the mobiles aren't, or the other way around. So
yeah, it's not full-time encryption. There is a couple on this chart here that we're looking at, well, the screen here, a couple of channels that have a DE with a capital E, as you can see there, but everything else is just the plain old D, which means digital, and it's in the clear. So that's what basically this kind of looks like now with the trunking era of channels.
So now you go back to that slide again, and you'll see the police has their dispatch channels. They have their TAC channels. They have their mutual aid channel, which is the one they use to talk to other agencies. Conference is usually like a car-to-car, or it could be, in some areas, depending on the terminology, it could be used as like a point-to-point channel. So this dispatch center to that dispatch center. You got your TAC channels, which are typically used for an operation, an ongoing operation. Sometimes you'll see a car-to-car channel, which would be listed as a law talk in the TAC, in the tag column. And then the fire is the same kind of thing. Dispatch always is, going to be where they're going to put the calls out. The fire grounds are the operational channels at a scene. And they might assign Fireground B for interior, and Fireground C for exterior, and E for rehab, and F for staging. Whatever they want to assign each of those channels for, and that could vary from fire to fire. The fire station channels in this agency, they might use that as the alerting channel for that station. So if they are going to call for ambulance 1 to come out of station 1, they would put it out on 25-133, or it could be a unit to unit, or a tactical channel just for that station. And then conference again is either like a base to base, or dispatch to dispatch, or some sort of car to car, vehicle to vehicle. And then they've got specialty channels, of course, for the training in the marshal's office, the administrators, they all have to have their own channel and such. And then those event channels can be used for just about anything.
Yeah, and the conference, I've heard the county that I'm in, they actually use that as a literally a conference channel as if everybody was in a conference room.
Oh, okay.
The EMS, what they basically do is they, at the start of the shift, everybody's on the road or they're at their assigned station houses for the ambulance, for the EMS. And what they'll do is they'll talk about, any equipment that's having any issues, upcoming weather. They will, anything else that they need to know before they start their shift. And then basically it would be the shift supervisor would be leading it. And then after that, then they would open up to anybody else have anything else to add. And then they literally, I feel like I'm eavesdropping in on roll call when I hear that periodically on the scanner, which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, these are definitely, we're going to dive into how these channels actually are used. We're going to show you in the next slide an example of the layers of what law communication looks like. As we've seen there, we had the law dispatch and a secondary dispatch. A lot of times all the major calls are being dispatched on the main channel. The secondary may be where you run plates or you're communicating things that require a little bit more airtime than normal. Interoperability is where they're going to monitor these other channels at other departments. You may get some bolos on there, or you may be needed for mutual aid. And those will communicate on the interop channels. The event channels are primarily just that. TAC and talk channels, talk around channel for car to car. The TAC channels may be assigned to a particular incident, which we're going to show you an example of. And then the crime unit channels. If these are in the clear, you may hear some interesting things. Now, keep in mind that a lot of times that these crime unit channels are relatively quiet for the most part. So you may go days, weeks, maybe even times months without any activity on some of these channels, and then all of a sudden you'll hear some activity.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that's why you want to keep those in the scanner and listen to them all the time, because you never know when the stuff's going to hit the fan. And when it does, they're going to be on these other channels other than the dispatch.
I'm not going to name a department that I monitored, because they probably think they're quote unquote encrypted on these channels, which they're not. So what'll basically happen when I was listening to this particular department, they would have a detective channel or channels, and what would happen is they would run surveillance on like a drug runner or whatever it may be, and it may be just one car doing surveillance. And as things start to pick up, they'll have multiple tails, and it'll be a coordinated effort where they're using a two-way radio communication. One guy or gal will be following the suspect. That one will turn off. The next car will take over. And then it would be a rotation of the vehicles. And then it feels like monitoring it. It's like listening to something where, you tuned into a TV show. You don't know the whole story. You're kind of right in the middle of it. I mean, because I've heard all types of things to the point where he's going to the girlfriend's house. He'll probably be going over to XYZ convenience store, because they followed this person so much that they know who he or she associates with, where they normally stop. There was one lady that I listened to surveillance on. And it was to the point now they were saying, all right, she went over to, I can't think of Cumberland Farms. She went over to Cumberland Farms. She got a slushie and some snacks. And then later on, she went to blah, blah, blah to McDonald's to get a milkshake to wash that all down. I mean,
it's a blow-by-blow description of this person's day.
Oh, I know. You were getting so much, and I could tell that they've watched this person quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, they know a lot about him.
Oh, yeah. Like the thing is, this is an acquaintance of this person. He's only going to be here for a few minutes. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, gone. It's pretty amazing. So if you're able to monitor these crime unit channels, then they're not encrypted, program them in. As Rich said, you're not going to hear everything all the time. So you're going to hear some juicy things. You're going to be turning to look at the screen. What the heck is going on? Why am I getting all this? And then you're going to be pressing the hold button, saying, I got to listen to this.
All righty. Now we got what happens during a chase.
So I listened to one of these yesterday. And this is pretty much exactly what happened. And this is when it becomes handy, especially with a high-speed chase, if you have multiple scanners.
Yeah.
For instance, Rich has got a couple of 536s behind him, and he's got his favorites list programmed in those radios. He can pop them on and pop them off. So he can run simultaneously a group of frequencies that are on both radios. So this is basically what happened yesterday. I was listening to the scanner over the dispatch channel. They had a vehicle that was failing to stop, and had a whole bunch of array of things the guy had going on. So the dispatch channel was tied up. So you remember that you see that secondary dispatch channel. A lot of times when there's an active pursuit, the officer doesn't have time to fiddle with the radio. That's going to take place on that dispatch channel because, he or she can't be screwing around with the radio when they're trying to pursue a vehicle. So that's where it's going to stay. So anything that's non-related to the high-speed chase will be on the secondary dispatch. So that's why you see a lot of towns have two channels. So what they can do is allow the channel 1 or dispatch channel to stay clear for the high-speed chase. Secondary channel will be everything that's not related to the chase. Interop channels will be used to communicate with neighboring towns looking for assistance. So what ended up happening yesterday, this gentleman had a rash of things that was going on with him. He got on the highway and he was going about 112 miles an hour. Then he decided to go on a secondary highway and drive down the wrong direction of the road, and then he bailed. At that point, when he bailed out of the car, they wanted to send in an air wing and a dog, and they basically assigned it a TAC channel. So they basically got everybody that was part of that incident went on the TAC channel, clearing that off, so they could basically use one of those TAC channels, and then the main dispatch channel and secondary dispatch channels were released for day-to-day operations. So that's kind of, you see how we got all the arrows there, basically the dispatch, the secondary, the interoperability, and the TAC channel. That's why there's so many channels. It allows them to be able to do something like this.
So when you have especially when you have a pursuit, there's a few other things that they're going to do. The first thing is at the street level, the car that's directly the squad that's directly behind the vehicle being chased. Hopefully, there's at least two cars there. The first car is all he's going to do is drive and keep an eye on that car. The guy in the second squad car, if there are two cars involved, he's going to do all the stuff on the radio. So that is the typical procedure. So the second car back is going to be on the radio, and oftentimes what they'll do is they'll move everybody else off the channel because the people involved in the chase, they're too busy doing this to start playing around with the channel selector on the radio. So those guys will stay on dispatch, and they'll move everybody else off to a secondary channel.
Now, the cool thing about trunking systems is I've heard this happen a couple of times in Massachusetts, where the pursuit goes over like Troop D to Troop H. And the cool thing about a trunking system is they can magically merge two channels together or two talk groups together and patch them together. So, then if they're entering, let's say it's starting in D Troop, and then they work their way into H Troop, H Patrol 2, you can patch those together and allow, the other officers in that area can listen in, they can assist, and so on, and they'd be aware of where this pursuit is.
Yeah, and the other thing you'll hear on these, when you've got something big going on, oftentimes the agency has a little alert tone that'll come up every 5 or 10 seconds, and just be a little beep, kind of a low-level beep, and that is a reminder to all the other people to stay off that channel. That channel is reserved for an incident. So if you're not involved in the incident, don't talk on the radio or move to another channel.
Yeah, and I remember hearing that quite a bit when I was watching the show that many of you remember, Live PD. When the officer was in a pursuit, and then they were doing cutaways to other officers heading there, you would hear the radio periodically beeping.
Yep.
And that's definitely as Rich said, it's just alerting them, hey, there's something going on in this channel. Don't go on there and key up the mic for 20 seconds. And
if anybody's familiar with the old California Highway Patrol low band from the skip days, they use that same type of thing on the base channel. The base channel would have that beep when the mobile channel was active. So when a car was talking to the dispatcher, they would put that beep out there so that the other troopers or highway patrol officers wouldn't be talking because they can't hear the mobile traffic, obviously. And so they call that a channel marker, and that's so if you listen to California Highway Patrol and skip, that's what you were hearing. It's the same thing that they use on the dispatch channels now, just to tell people to, hey, stay off the channel.
Exactly. Let's take a look at some of the fire communications. As we saw in that town there that had a whole slew of those channels. So basically we have the dispatch channels. Sometimes they have two dispatch channels depending on the size of the city or town. And then they have an interop and mutual aid channels. And then, of course, fire, ground, and operations, which we saw perfect examples of that. And then special units like hazmat, your administrative, and so on.
Yep.
So this is, you're basically your pyramid here of, fire, dispatch, and then you have, the ability to, do mutual aid, interoperability, and then, of course, your fire, ground, and operations, and your special units. Let's look at an example here of how this all works. During a structure fire, probably dispatched out on the fire dispatch channel. And then the dispatcher will assign it to either a fire, ground, or operations channel. They'll say, responding to a structure fire, ladder 1, blah, 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 rescue 1, so on and so forth. Operations channel 2 or fire ground 2, and then when they arrive on scene, of course, they'll be switched to that channel. So they'll have a person that's taking command of the event.
A lot of times what they'll do is, in some agencies, the dispatcher will assign them to a fire ground or an operations channel on the initial dispatch.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, and other times in other agencies, when they arrive at the scene, they will take a fire ground channel and they'll say, okay, we're going to be operating on fire ground red or fire ground 7 or what have you. So depending on the agency, you either know the fire ground channel as you get the dispatch, and it'll also be in your CAD system, or they will assign it to you when you get there, either by the command officer or they'll ask the dispatcher for a fire ground channel.
The other thing, sometimes incidents require a secondary operations or fire ground channel. This basically would be, let's say you have a 5-alarm fire, and you have mutual aid rolling in. They're at a staging location. A lot of times this will be coordinated on a secondary channel because you have the main incident maybe using a couple of channels, and you don't want departments checking in on those channels where where they're doing their their tactical for the fire.
Yeah,
so
and they could have fireground channels assigned to rehab. They can have one fireground channel assigned to interior, another one to exterior, or different exposures could have their own fireground channels. They're obviously your staging channel. So they could have several different fireground channels at a large incident for specific purposes, so that they're not all talking on top of each other.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing about it is it's communication, and this is not like what you see on TV where it's a party line where everybody can talk to each other at the same time. Only one person has the floor or the airwaves at one time.
Right.
So, I mean, if you got everybody and their uncle talking on the radio at the same time, you're going to be hearing ronk.
Yeah, and they're following, a lot of this stuff also follows the incident command system. And in that type of thing, the only time you talk to the dispatcher is when you're en route to or returning from the scene, or if you're the commander. So everything else goes through either one of the command, either the incident commander or one of the sub-commanders for that specific incident. So when you get to the scene and you're an engine company and you're assigned to an exterior attack at the rear of the building, you never talk to the dispatcher. You don't tell the dispatcher anything. Any communication you have goes to incident command or one of his subordinates that he's assigned to supervise that type of thing. And that keeps the dispatcher from having to deal with and coordinate all the activities at the scene. That's the commander's job.
Yes. But yeah, I mean, this just gives you a prime example of some of those channels and how they are used. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is just a basic map of what this would all look like. So that's why it's very important to probably program in some of these secondary channels, because you may not be getting the whole entire story. Now, we're going to recommend some other stuff to monitor on your scanner. So these are things that I program in to my scanner. As you can see there with trunking systems, there's an abundance of talk groups. A lot of times the state police has an air wing talk group. The great thing about that is that's where the air wing is dispatched out initially. So what you're going to hear is, Air Wing 2, we need you to fly over to XYZ for a search, or some sort of other mission. So the great thing about monitoring that channel is what's going on across your state. So you're going to be able to be tipped off. Let's say it's a town next door to you. So you could start listening to that. Oh, they got a foot pursuit. So, you could then tune into that particular city or town if you're within listening range. So that's a good thing to be able to do that. Some states actually have statewide interops. Same thing. Monitoring those channels will allow you to be able to hear what's going on in your backyard or across the state. So those are very good channels to monitor. Neighboring state interop channels. Let's say there's something going on by the border. They're going to know, one state's going to communicate with the other, and that's a good thing to monitor as well. And then state wide event channels and operations, those are good ones as well, because a lot of times if it's a highway patrol or state police ops channel or a special ops channel, they're going to use that as their on-scene communication. Let's say they do have a foot pursuit or a search going on. And that's great to listen to because it's going to give you an inside look of what's going on in that neck of the woods. And the other great thing about those ones that I mentioned, pretty much on this whole entire state level list, a lot of these talk groups are statewide. So you're going to be able to hear it on all the sites or towers, which is going to make it great.
And the nice thing with these events channels is just like we were talking about before at the local level, it could be multiple disciplines talking to each other. The highway department talking to the state police, talking to some other agencies, and sometimes even local agencies will have access to those statewide events channels as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's totally great, to monitor these. And a lot of times, some of these event channels and operations channels may be quiet most of the time.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing that, I'd recommend is the medical chopper operations like MedFlight or LifeStar or whatever it may be called in your neck of the woods. That is great to monitor as well, because initially those helicopters will be dispatched on that channel. They'll be given particular instructions of what's going on at the incident, where to land, and so on and so forth. And that's great to monitor in case you're looking to monitor the big event. And let's say it's up the street or a town that you can monitor. You may want to listen into the fire department or the police department of that particular incident. And then, of course, you'll hear those medical helicopters switch over to the local channel or talk group. Which is great. And the fire towers. This was something that I monitored quite a bit in Massachusetts. For the most part, they were pretty quiet other than signing on or signing off. But when there was some large possible fire going on, you knew about it. You would hear the tower communicate to the central dispatch, and then that would basically trickle down to the local fire department, which would go check it out, what's going on.
Yeah, so if if you're in an area that is prone to wildland fires, you're going to have those. You may have fire towers, and then of course, with the being able to talk to the aircraft, the fire towers will be able to talk to the aircraft, which are called tenders, by the way, or tankers, by the way. Tenders have wheels. Tenders have wheels. Tankers have wings. So that's the official terminology on that. So the fire towers can talk to the aircraft, can talk to the ground units as well. And when they're active, they're fun to listen to.
And that's for sure. And the other thing that you can listen to, too, is the emergency management channels. A lot of the states have that. You would hear on their broadcasts for weather alerts, or these emergency management channels would be used for a marathon or for some large event that may be going across several communities or a large area. Basically, the emergency management would coordinate a lot of the communication, like for the Boston Marathon, for example. They would coordinate a lot of the communication. And the reason why emergency management, or MEMA, from Massachusetts, would coordinate, because there was a lot of levels. You had the state, you had the local, you had the county, you even had the federal level involved. And basically they kind of coordinated everything amongst everybody, no matter what system they were on, whether it be trunking, digital, analog, conventional, they coordinated it all. And of course, we can't forget your local level with your county. A lot of counties from Massachusetts, for example, have a regional fire network or a police network. And a lot of times, if you look at Plymouth County, for example, in Massachusetts, they have a great fire network. A lot of cities or towns are basically analog or analog conventional.
Right.
And they will use one of the county channels as a fire ground. And the county will assign them, for a large incident, will assign them a fire ground, and then they would essentially use that, because more than likely the police or fire department, in the fire department in this case, may be having one or two channels of their own, and it may be over capacity because the incident being so large. And then the regional police network channels. I remember growing up in Massachusetts, all the police dispatchers have the ability to go on that channel. If there's a BOLO going on, they could get it out relatively quickly. And a lot of the police officers would monitor that channel, so they would know about it before their dispatcher put it out, individually. So a lot of cool things there. And of course, local emergency management as well. So, you
kind of replicate state level stuff with a little bit lesser a little bit lower level of it.
Yeah, I mean the thing is I would definitely recommend programming a lot of these channels in. The way I would recommend is program it into its own system, bank, scan list, or favorites list. Have all this stuff clustered together, or maybe have a couple of different levels of it. Maybe have one of those bank, scan list, or favorites list or system when maybe some of your state level stuff and some of your county levels. So you have the ability to turn these things on and off. And if you have the ability and you've got an extra radio sitting around, you may want to program that secondary radio just to monitor this, just to be able to hear some of those goose eggs of events that are going on that you may find interesting, and you won't miss a beat because you'll be able to hear the initial dispatch of the event. Yep,
absolutely. So you want to, if you can, if you have the ability to have a secondary scanner or a tertiary or a quarter, more than one extra scanner, have one assigned specifically for the mutual aid and the ops channels, the fire grounds, and that kind of stuff, and have one for the dispatch stuff. And that one that when the fire ground channels and the ops channels and the event channels start popping up, that's when you got something big going on.
Yeah, I mean, all these channels are basically going to tip you off to any of those big events. Interops, we've talked about this before in previous shows. These are all the various things that you can, for interops and mutual aid terminology. We'll run through this real quick. So mutual aid, which we've talked about, acts of assisting other agencies, interoperability to communicate with other agencies. And Rich, tell us a little bit about the next one.
Okay, so the TSIP is the Tactical Interoperable Communications Plan. And that is a plan. It's either at a county, local, or even a state level that has the entire plans for communications, including the channel plans and such. And often we'll have templates for the communications plans and such, so that you can go in there and just follow along. It's pretty much a guide on how to do all this stuff. A lot of those plans are available on your state or county or local websites. So check around and see if you can find it. If you can find it, it's a lot of great information in there. And then the NIFOG, which is the National Interoperability Fields Guide, that is a treasure trove of information. All the mutual aid channels that you ever thought of and that you've never heard of are listed in there. There is so much good information on there. Mostly it's communication, radio communications, but there's a lot of telephone stuff. There's hazmat information in there. There's all kinds of really, really good information in the NIFOG. And we've talked about command at fire scenes and stuff. Most agencies in the U.S. these days are using some form of incident command system, which is a plan, a common plan for communications and control of an incident. And it might be as simple as a fireground commander at a fireground with 2 or 3 engines and a ladder company putting out a house fire, or it could be a huge wildlands fire or multi 5-alarm fire in a city. It all uses the same type of system. And the nice thing about ICS is everybody knows the same system, and every agency that goes there can participate in it and understand what's going on because they're using the same terminology and the same protocols. So if you've been trained in ICS, I'm an ICS level 800, you know how to operate in that system. You know the terminology that you're supposed to use, and that brings into the ICS 205, and that's a form that they can use either at a scene or for pre-planning to determine, okay, who's going to use this channel, who's going to use that channel, who's going to be in charge of this particular situation. So it just makes things easy to understand how to do that. And then the National Incident Management System is the overall protocol used for managing an incident. And again, it could be from a small incident to a really huge incident.
Yeah, it's definitely great stuff right there. So if you're able to get access to some of this online, and there's a lot of this stuff online that you can certainly check out. So certainly do that as well. Let's continue on here. So that is our public safety channel infrastructure show this evening. And as always, we're the Scanner Guys, brought to you by Scanner Master. We're going to have a big interview, Rich, next week. Are you excited about this?
Yeah, Chuck. I've known Chuck for a long time. And he is the publisher of a magazine called National Communications. And it's a scanner, CB, shortwave magazine. And like most magazines these days, it's put out in PDF format. And he knows what he's talking about. And he's been a writer for a long time. And he does a great job with this. So we're going to be talking with Mr. Chuck.
Yeah, so he'll be on the show next week. If you're using Roku or Apple TV, make sure you download the YouTube app. You can watch us on the big screen. We'll be on the air, of course, as always, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific, Wednesday, April the 21st. Tune in and watch this great interview. We can't wait to have him on. And we can't say enough about our sponsor, Scanner Master. Since 1978, Scanner Master is the most experienced dealer of all brands of police scanners, software, accessories, and programming. Shop them online or call the scanner experts at 1-800-722-6637. Open Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Online at scannermaster.com. Email them, support@scannermaster.com. And make sure you follow them on their social media as well, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. So definitely tune in to this great interview that we have coming up next week with Chuck. We're looking forward to that. I mean, we're trying to do an interview a month. And we also have, which I want to mention, that we have on the Train Aficionado show. Let's just put that up for a second. Danny Harmon of Distant Signals will be joining us on Train Aficionado Live. And that's going to be Monday, May the 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Subscribe to the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. Do that now, and then you definitely want to see this interview. He was just at the Folkestone Funnel down in Georgia this past weekend, so he was doing that, and you could have seen him out there. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go out that far out this weekend, but at some point I want to definitely go to the Folkestone Funnel. But he's got a great YouTube channel, and we're going to have him on. He's going to be our first interview on the Train Aficionado show, so hopefully you can join us then as well. Mark your calendar, set an alert on your phone. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And you can follow the Train Aficionado social media on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. And check out Train Aficionado at the website, trainaficionado.com. So, with that being said, we have a lot of questions and comments. So we saw a lot of check-ins before we even hit the air this evening. So that was a nice welcome aboard. We want to remind you, hit the like button down on the bottom, and then hit the subscribe button while you're there as well. We want to definitely grow the channel. That helps us out, making the channel bigger and better, and more people are able to discover this channel.
Absolutely. Well, we do read each and every comment, even if we don't talk about it on the air, but we do read each and every one of them. So
and some of these we're reading while we're talking at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So and a bunch of people are commenting about how they found their local event channels and such. Jim is talking about some of the old channels he used to listen to back in the 70s. That's about the time I started in the scanner bit. So, and some of those old scanners still work on some of these legacy channels. So, in fact, the agency that I was when I was a kid, the town that I grew up in, they're still using that old 155.13 police channel that they were using in the 60s today as their car-to-car channel. So Joe's going to be ordering his SDS 100 soon. Make sure that on the SDSs especially, and a lot of other scanners these days and accessories, stock is very limited on a lot of these things these days. So if you are looking for something and it's out of stock, make sure you put your email in to be notified when they come back in stock. And once you get that email, make sure you reply to it right away and either call us or order it online right away, because the stuff is going out as fast as it's coming in.
Yeah, I mean, what really ended up happening is you had, a lot of companies shut down the manufacturing because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And now a lot of people spent a lot of time at home and they've gotten interested in maybe listening to their public safety on an app, because they're trying to look for, there's only so much Netflix and other things you can watch. And more people got into the hobby. So what ended up happening is you're getting a little bit more production, but unfortunately, when it goes to Scanner Master's door, it's going out as quickly as it's coming in.
Right. And even the stuff that's being manufactured, we can't get here because all the container ships and the containers are all blocked up in the ports and out on the water. It's just the whole shipping chain is disrupted as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. But yeah, definitely hit the blue. Email me when back in stock. It is tied in with the Scanner Master inventory. As soon as our shipping manager puts in inventory, it automatically, magically blasts everybody out. And like Rich said, as soon as you get that email, act on it. Don't wait a day or two because, it could be out of stock by then.
Well, we had that with the SDS 100. We had a huge shipment of them, and I don't know the exact number, but it was well past 3 digits and stuff, and they went really, really quick. So Joe's going to be ordering his SDS 100, so hopefully he'll be able to get one. Todd just got his 436 today, so he's been playing with that. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's a great scanner. If you don't have simulcast in your area, the 436 and 536s are still great radios.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I love my 536.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got 2 of them right here, and I've got one in the vehicle, so they're great. And I got my 436 up there. I use it all the time. Joe P is out in Kern County, California, which is Inland Valley. They went from UHF to VHF, which is kind of backwards. Usually they go the other way around. And then about a year later, they had to start the narrowbanding. So it's like Murphy's Law. You move to a new channel, and then they tell you, oh, no, you got to change it all. So
yeah, I mean, with the VHF, you're going to have a little bit better coverage. I noticed that VHF is way better coverage than UHF. Yeah. I remember when I worked in Holliston, I was able to listen to Attleboro Fire, which was on VHF, and then as soon as they turned into UHF, I couldn't hear it anymore. Right. I mean, just the distance on VHF is so much better than on UHF.
So Rick, where Rick is at, a lot of the police and fire have gone to P25, but the American Medical Response is a private ambulance company, big company. In fact, we have them out here as well. And the Life Flight, which is the helicopters, are still an analog. So you'll see that a lot where some agencies will go digital, some will go stay analog, or vice versa. So that's why all digital scan, and this is another question we get all the time. I want to buy this digital scanner, but some of my stuff is still analog. Well, yeah, that's fine. So digital scanners all do analog as well. So if you buy a digital scanner, you can still listen to analog on it as well. So Jim is in Miami, and he says it's one of the largest fire departments in the country, and they're all analog. So apparently they were digital at one point, but they went back to analog. That happens from time to time.
Building saturation is a huge issue with fire departments because, when you go into a structure, you're going to want to have some signal to be able to hit out. And if there's issues with inside of a structure, that definitely creates a lot of issues. You'll see a lot of fire departments having to do different things, because they're going into a structure and they need to communicate out. Sometimes, they'll have a repeater on the truck, or they'll have different systems in place. But yeah, I could totally get why fire departments are kind of, the digital, I'm not too sure.
It's worked for them for many years. As long as they have enough capacity on the system, why spend the extra money for digital? So, and one thing with trunking systems, and Joe brought this up at 19, when they have all these, hundreds of talk groups out there, but they don't plan on how many voice paths you're going to have. So if you've got a 5-channel trunking system, you can only have 4 voice paths at a time in a P25 Phase 1 system, or you can have 8 on a Phase 2 system, but you might have 500 talk groups. And you think, oh, great, we have all these different conversations going on at one time. But no, with a 4-channel Phase 1 system, you get 4 conversations at a time, and after that, they're going to get a busy signal.
They're going to be pressing. Oh, this is SDS 200, but it looks just like a 2-way radio, and hold it this way. Then we press the button, beep, beep. They can't get out.
They can't get out. Yeah. So that's why they have priorities set up on there as well. So the dog catcher gets kicked off when the fire chief needs to talk, and there's not any channels available. So where Mike is at, they got a lot of mutual aid channels, and the police have got a lot of event channels, but unfortunately they're all encrypted. That stinks. So Jim had a question earlier. How can a system be called simulcast if there's only one antenna site?
Jim, you need to watch our slideshow about simulcasting. So we talked about this last week.
Yeah.
I think, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, but there's 2 different uses for the term simulcast. Most of the time when you're talking about scanners and you talk about simulcast, that means there are multiple towers transmitting the same traffic at the same time on the same frequencies. And that's where the SDSs come in. Oftentimes, you also hear simulcast used to simulcast the low-band channel onto the UHF channel, or the VHF channel onto the trunking system. Yeah, this same terminology, but different technology. So that could be also called multicast and such, but that's more of a patch or that. But yeah, a lot of times there's a confusion on the word simulcast. So it could be simulcasting the old VHF channel onto the 800 system or something like that. If it's simulcast in a trunking system, it means there are multiple towers on the same frequency at the same time with the same traffic. That's the definition of simulcast when it pertains to a trunking system like that. But sometimes they'll multicast a conversation on an old channel. So
that's what simulcast looks like, for a trunking system.
Yeah.
You could see that there's multiple channels there, and multiple towers, not channels.
Multiple towers, but they all transmit at the same time. They all have the same site ID and everything else. It's just like they're all just talking at the same time, and when they get to a radio, the radios can sometimes get confused. The SDSs were built to handle that, and they sound much better on them. So
yeah, I could tell you that there's for a lot of the counties have their own trunk system, and away from the state system here in North Carolina on the Viper system here.
Yeah.
So there is some simulcasting. For Rowan County, for the state police, they simulcast their talk group for the state police in this area on the system.
Yeah.
So that's a different type of simulcasting. So, so you can use...
you have to understand the context.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so our buddy Dale from out west, he says he has a state agency out there that's got a car-to-car channel that's analog and conventional until they turn on encryption, and then it switches to P25 conventional, not trunked, but encrypted. So yeah, you can have encrypted conventional, and you can have encrypted trunking. It's using the same technology, it's just that you're not going through a trunking system. And DE is the digital encryption. We talked about that quite a bit earlier. And so Mike asked when the SDSs are going to be back in stock. We've already discussed that quite a bit. So we were talking earlier about terminology. So when you're using ICS or in the NIM system, the big debate is tankers versus tenders. Okay, officially a tanker has got wings and a tender has got wheels, but in common usage, a tanker is often used, interchangeable with a tender, because that was the terminology that they'd used for years and years. But out west, they tend to use the tanker in the air and tender on the ground more often than they do out east. But I've heard it on both sides of the country using both ways. But if you're following the rules, tenders have wheels, tankers have wings. Yeah, let's see here. Channel marker, we're talking about that. Okay, so when they switched, when you're talking about Troop D and Troop E in Massachusetts,
Yeah.
do they have an F troop?
Yes.
All right, do they use bugles?
No. It's actually F Troop is Logan Airport, which I believe.
Okay, so that one went right over your head.
Yeah, well, I know I know that it was pertaining to that, but yeah, I saw that comment. But yeah, F Troop is Logan Airport, and I'm not too sure if it got consolidated.
Yeah,
they did consolidate E Troop, the Mass Pike. I won't go to why they did that, but there's a reason behind it.
There were issues.
Yes.
So one thing with police chases, if you're not in California, oftentimes police chases will be terminated by the watch commander or some other supervisor for safety reasons. I have terminated many more pursuits than I've allowed when I was a supervisor on the street. Most of the time, it's not worth chasing somebody for a stolen car or because they took off from a speeding ticket or something like that.
Oh, come on, Rich. You can't have a Blues Brothers high-speed chase?
No, we don't do that. So,
and you remember the line that the dispatcher said on there?
Yeah. The use of excessive force has been allowed.
Has been permitted.
Like has been permitted. So, yeah. No, the pursuits are extremely dangerous.
Yeah, they definitely are.
Before I started, my agency had a situation where the state police chased a car off the interstate, and when the road ended, the car kept on going and wrapped itself around the tree. 3 kids got killed because they were out after curfew. And even though we weren't involved with that, it made a big impression on us. So our agency was very wary of high-speed pursuits, and we often would let them go versus following it to the bitter end because they all too often end up in crashes.
I mean, the great thing about it is if you have the ability to get to an air wing or you have the air wing a part of it, the great thing about having the air wing is the air wing can continue, the pursuit vehicles can back off, and the air wing can watch where that vehicle ends up.
Yeah,
and then
you know what? The guy gets away.
Yeah, and they eventually have to. If it's their vehicle, they're eventually going to go home sometime.
Yep. And if it's a stolen vehicle, then so be it. I'd rather let the bad guy get away than get somebody killed, and it just isn't worth it. So our policy on that was, if it's more likely to get somebody hurt by letting him go, then we'll continue the chase. Otherwise, forget it. It's not worth it. Tone outs. So our buddy Frothingham misses the analog tone outs. A lot of fire departments used to use 2 tones, and a lot of them have gone away from that. Where I was at, in Illinois, everything was 2-tone. It was great. I loved it. And out here, it's very unusual. So it's like, that was And nowadays with trunking systems, sometimes you'll hear two tones go out on trunking systems. Most of the time, that's just there because the firefighters are used to hearing that, and that they key in on that. So it's basically there just for the noise to let the guys know what's coming up.
The old timers can reminisce.
Yeah, exactly. They did that when our fire department, when I was on before I became in the police department, when they went to a trunking system for years, they continued with the same tones they always use, but they were there to make noise. Yeah, for the guys to recognize them. So
yeah, I mean, it does get your attention. I mean, the county that I'm in uses tone outs on the trunk system.
Yeah,
and it does get your attention. You know, like, and you do perk up. You know, like, okay, what is this call? Am I involved? Right. You know, am I going to have to go out to this?
Yeah. And there's some more discussion about the different fireground channels and such. Water supply is another, the water supply staging. If you have a lot of tankers coming in, tenders coming in into a fire scene where there's not, where you don't have good hydrants. I've been on many of those type of fires when we still call them tankers. And if the situation is busy enough, you might assign a specific fireground channel just for water supply.
Yeah, I mean, it varies from area to area just because of the various issues you may run into if you're, if it just depends. And then of course, channel capacity, what they're able to do. If they're able to assign a whole slew of channels, then they're able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Rick says in his hometown, the fire dispatcher keeps the incident command of it on a time clock. So, yeah, that's actually very common these days. Depending on the agency, a lot of times the command will say you're 20 minutes into your incident or you're 30 minutes into your incident. So there are certain things the commander is supposed to do at certain time intervals. He's supposed to do a survey of his personnel to make sure everybody is still alive and kicking at certain times. So this is a way to remind them, hey, you're 10 minutes in, you're 20 minutes in. Oh, you're an hour in. It's better. It's time to get some rehab units out here, or get the canteen, or get some fresh crews out here to relieve some of the guys that have been working for so long. So that's why they are doing them, keeping them advised of how long they are into their incident. So Greg says he's thinking about getting a Home Patrol 2. He's already got a 125. With everything going towards encryption, will it be a waste of money? Well, we talked about that a couple shows ago.
Yeah, I mean, well, it depends. If you like some of the features of the Home Patrol, like the touchscreen display, to be able to program it through the Sentinel software, with the favorites lists and so on and so forth, yes, it is a digital scanner. Yeah. But if you're looking for something that has the feature sets with the touchscreen and so on and the small compact size, I mean, that's what you have to kind of weigh. Of course, with our friend over at the Scanner School, this week just dropped a podcast about, encryption. Yeah. Because there's encryption doesn't mean it's the end of the world.
There's other stuff to listen to.
He used the example. Your favorite restaurant closes. Does it mean you go hungry? No. Yeah. You find another favorite restaurant.
Right. Find something else to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing with the scanner. So I would recommend take a look at the features. Keep in mind, what you're looking to listen to and whether or not the dollars add up for making the investment of the Home Patrol 2. I mean, the grand scheme of things, this is all about what you can budget yourself for. I mean, if you're able to afford the SDS, 100, 200, when it's available, you have to weigh it. Okay, I see a lot of encryption coming down the road, but other than that, what do I like about the radio, and am I going to be able to use those features?
All right, so Chris is in Pennsylvania, and he's got a CSX track that operates on one track there, and it's obviously they run both directions on that same track. When it comes to town, it blocks the vehicular traffic. Is there any type of a system for a plan B to get around these systems? So most agencies, if they are thinking, they will have and if they've got a railroad tracks that runs through town, they're going to have a plan on what happens if the tracks are blocked. And it happens from time to time. A train breaks down, there might be a derailment, they could be switching, they could be blocking that crossing for long periods of time, and you have to be able to accommodate for that. So you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So if your town is big enough to have 2 stations, you put one on each side of the tracks, and so that you have that, or you have a mutual aid plan in place. The town that I worked in most of my career, our railroad tracks were depressed at a lower level, so there was bridges over the tracks, so we didn't have a problem with that. But some of our neighboring towns did. So their plans were, if the gates were down and they were blocked, they knew where the bridges were, where they can get around the stop train, or they knew where their neighbors' firehouses were and who could respond to it. We had the same thing for the police department. If the town was cut off and they couldn't get there and we were on that side of the tracks, we would go over and respond to them if they were all stuck on the other side of the track. So
some communities have actually put in legislation that, CSX, Norfolk Southern, UP, and so on, if they block X amount of crossings within a period of time, they will get fined.
Yeah. Well, the thing is depending on the law, if the train, sometimes the law is written where if the train is stopped for more than 10 minutes, they can get a ticket and have to pay a fine. But most of the railroads won't pay those fines, and they've won those cases in court. And the other thing too is if they're switching, they could be switching there for half an hour, and as long as the train is moving, it's not stopped, so they're legal. Physical. So yeah, or nowadays with these monster trains. I watched the Flagstaff feed on the BNSF, and there are a couple trains that they got to be 250 cars long. They got 3 engines on the front. God knows how many container cars after that. 4 more engines in the middle. God knows how many more containers after that, and 3 more pushing on the rear end. So yeah. And that train can be going through at 60 miles an hour and be blocking the crossing for 20 minutes.
And a lot of these trains can't fit on a siding, so they got to keep going.
Yeah.
If you've been out to Pennsylvania at the Horseshoe Curve, you'll see some of the largest trains out there. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing it here in North Carolina. I'm seeing trains that are huge. They're
doubling and tripling down on these trains because locomotives are relatively cheap. It's the people on the train that cost them more money. So you can have 2 guys on a train with 500 cars, or you could have 6 guys running 3 trains of 100 cars apiece. So,
speaking of trains, we can't stress enough. If you want to hear Rich and I talk more about trains, tune into Train Aficionado Live. Our next show will be Monday, May the 3rd. At 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We will have Danny Harmon of Distant Signals on the show.
Yep.
So definitely tune in, and you'll be able to hear us talk about trains for 90 minutes or an hour and a half, as Rich states, which is the same thing. Follow, like, and subscribe to the Train Aficionado social media, and don't forget to subscribe to the Train Aficionado YouTube channel. Nice little segue there. We'll continue on.
The question came up about HIPAA, and it's the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It's HIPAA, not HIPPA, as some people call it. And the same thing with a lot of these things. Sometimes the abbreviations aren't quite correct, but it is really HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, and that's basically a privacy. One of the things in that law is some privacy protections for healthcare recipients. And although a lot of the HIPAA items really don't apply in emergency medicine, it's good practice to not identify your patient on the air, whether the law permits it or not, just to protect them. And you don't want your neighbors knowing that you are being brought in for such and such. It's a privacy thing. So oftentimes what they will do is they will identify the patient with a random number that's assigned to them by the hospital. Other places will just give an initial or say patient number 7 is this, patient number 8 is that, and such. So they try not to identify the patients with identifying information. Not going to put their social security number out there. They're not going to put their name. They're not going to put that kind of stuff just to maintain the privacy. Sometimes there are some HIPAA Act restrictions. Other times there are misconceptions about what HIPAA permits and doesn't permit you to do. But all in all, it's a good practice to try to maintain the privacy of the patient, whether they're in your ambulance or they're the emergency room. Let's see here. And some agencies are better at doing that than others. And we do have to apologize. There was a typo. It's the TICP, the Tactical Interoperability Communications Plan, not the TCIP. Sorry about that. I didn't catch that when we were working. And TCIP is a computer technology thing. Again, a lot of these abbreviations are done wrong. HIPAA is HIPAA, not HIPPA. And the TICP, not the TCIP. A lot of times these abbreviations get kind of mixed up sometimes. Furlingham is in northern Kentucky, and apparently all the medical stuff there is encrypted. So they really don't have to worry too much about HIPAA being violated by putting that stuff out on the radio if it's all encrypted. And let's see here. He also has a TRX-1, and he only uses it for interop channels. That's great. That's great.
This this needs to be relayed to our management.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they beg to differ, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, we are much more effective than our bosses are led to believe.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Whenever Jim says anytime anybody comes in Miami or Fort Lauderdale area in East Florida, everything's in the clear except for the SWAT, sex crimes, detectives, and stuff. So you got like 5 million people in 2 counties. Almost everything is in the clear. That's great. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
And obviously you can't hear it if it's encrypted. And that's a question we get all the time. When are we coming out with an encrypted capable scanner?
Never.
Nope. Ain't gonna happen, my friend.
That's the reason why they encrypt.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of encryption is so people cannot hear it on the scanner.
Yeah.
I remember having 10-minute conversations with the people who, well, I want to be able to hear it. Well, the only way you're going to be able to hear it is if you commit a crime and you got thrown in the back of the squad car. You'll be able to hear it as you drive into the station. Other than that, you're not going to hear it.
That's right. So apparently there is some encryption coming up in the Miami area, but still a lot of it is still open. So, and let's see here. In Toronto, they still use the tone codes. That's cool. Let's see here. Oh, I hate that. Every time I move the mouse and then the thing goes right back to the end, and I got to scroll all the way back and try to find where I was. All right. So Chris asks how he can get a picture of some of my old setups. If you go to Radio Reference, I have a bunch of my pictures are there, although some of them have disappeared over the years, but a lot of my old setups are there. So they are probably going to be there. You'll probably be able to see a lot of them. I am planning one of these days to put on my blog some of my old pictures as well. So God knows I've changed it enough. I've got plenty of pictures. And let's see here. A lot of this stuff is stuck on the ship in the Suez Canal. Yeah. Although most of the stuff coming here from the Far East doesn't go through the Suez, that comes across the Pacific. But yeah, that ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal for almost a week or so, that caused a huge problem for Europe and Asia. Not so much in the U.S., but a lot of that probably will still affect us one way or the other. Worldwide chip shortage, that's another problem with scanners. They obviously use chips, and so that's probably that's probably affecting the manufacture of a lot of these electronics equipments. Most California fire agencies are still on VHF. Yes, Joe, that is extremely accurate. We talk to people in California all the time, and while a lot of the police departments, especially in like Riverside and San Bernardino, Imperial counties, are encrypted, all the California Fire, Cal Fire, and a lot of the local fires are all VHF analog in the clear, and they do that for a reason, because analog is very easy to share channel plants and such. So that is a good thing. Unless you're in Orange County, California, and they're still encrypted, although they said they are going to remove the encryption, and they've been saying that for the last 3 years now.
Common trend with Orange County, because Orange County, California has got encryption, and Orange County, Florida has got encryption.
Oh, gee.
The two orange counties that I can think of off the top of my head.
The question came up about what's the best radio to listen to police and fire in Washoe County, Nevada. So Washoe County is the area up and around Reno, and they are moving from the old state system to a new P25 Phase 2 system, and it is all Phase 2, and it appears to be all in the clear as well. So if you're in Reno or the rest of Washoe County, you're going to want to get a Phase 2 capable scanner. A lot of places got burned by digital systems. Pittsburgh apparently did, is according to Joe here. And don't even get me started about OpenSky. New York and Pennsylvania with their OpenSky systems got really burned on that. So let's see here. We're talking about simulcast earlier. Dave's got his SDS 100 and he's loving it. He's going to go to St. Louis for the wife's doctor's appointment, and he's been carrying the 436, so he'll be able to compare the two of them. Yeah, they are using simulcast in a lot of areas in and around St. Louis, so you'll probably notice your SDS working much better on that. Most of the police out there, though, are encrypted, so you'll probably be listening to mostly fire and local traffic. So Charlie still has a 1040, and he's loving it. The 1040s are great scanners. They're inexpensive. They have great audio on P25 and analog. And they're very sturdy. It's just that they won't do Phase 2, and they don't have some of the newer features that some of the newer scanners have. So, some discussion about scanner cases. We do have a wide range of scanners.
Cases.
Scanner cases, I mean. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was in the middle of the hiccup there. So
we have cases.
That we have in stock. And they are made here in the U.S., so transportation is a whole lot less of an issue, and they don't have chips in them.
Yeah, and you're supporting American-made products.
That's right.
Cases.
Yep, they're made in Illinois, in suburban Chicago. Robert asks, is it unusual for fire trucks and cars to have onboard repeaters? That's actually relatively common. We had our command vehicle on the police department I worked for. I put in a repeater in our command vehicle, and we would use it on the scene as an alternate channel for at-scene communications to give a little bit better range than you can get from portable to portable. It actually worked out really, really well. And we did the same thing for the fire department. And we also put in a fireground repeater for the local high school. And basically what we did is we had a fireground channel that they couldn't get good building penetration into this high school, an old big brick and cinder block building. And so we put a little portable repeater, suitcase type repeater, permanently installed it onto an antenna at the top floor of the building, and the input was the fireground, the local fireground channel, and the output was one of our other channels that we had licensed to it. So if you had a call at the high school, you could listen to fireground by listening to that other channel. So we programmed that other channel on the radios, and that worked out really, really well and gave great in-building coverage for fireground operations at the high school. So we use that all the time out there. A lot of agencies will have deployable repeaters, where we had that, where we actually put a handle on it, one of these suitcase type repeaters, and we had a couple places with an antenna that was at a tower, and it came down to a piece of coax. You just take the repeater, plug it into the power jack, plug it into the antenna, and now you've got a deployed repeater with a great antenna. And sometimes they'll use mobile masts, or they'll just pop an antenna on top of a vehicle. Some search and rescue teams have multiple portable repeaters as well. Carmen asks at 19 after, the unit in BCD 3600 XLT, is that in the European equivalent to the 436? I know there is a European equivalent to the 436, but I don't remember if that's the 3600 XLT. It very well could be, and especially if it has that same appearance. But I know there are European versions of a lot of these scanners, and so the physical radio is going to be almost the same. The difference is going to be the band plan. Like Joe says, it's going to be the band plan because they use different sets of frequencies in different locations around the world. So that's why they have a little chipset. Remember last week when we took pictures inside the SDS 100? Portions of the boards are covered with a piece of epoxy. It's those controls that allow them to use the same hardware on different locations. So you click that little resistor and it makes it the European version. And it opens up these frequencies but blocks those frequencies and vice versa. And that's why they put the epoxy on them, so that you don't take an American radio and open up the frequencies that are used in Europe but are used for different stuff here in the U.S., like cellular phones and such. Not that they would work on cell phones anymore anyway, but they still have to follow the law. Does the police and fire departments have contingency plans in case the internet goes down? Well, that's a great question. So, 10 or 15 years ago, the internet was not a big deal for police and fire departments. It was kind of a luxury to be able to have it in the police station, much less out in a vehicle. And nowadays, boy, the internet goes down and they're in all kinds of hurt. So a lot of communication systems are set up to use internet protocol for interlinks and such. Hopefully they have backups built in so that if the internet does go down or it's real slow, they can still communicate. So, let's see here. What else is going on here, guys? A bunch of guys just checking in.
We're almost at it. We're actually out of time now.
Oh, wow, we are out of time. So I think we're pretty much out of comments too. So we've got mostly just comments on stuff that we've already talked about. So we are good there, and I think we're about done, my friend.
All right. So if you have any questions, or you think of a question, or you're watching the show and you have a question, you can always email support@scannermaster.com. Be happy to answer any of your questions there regarding anything related to the scanner topic. So definitely do that as well. You can always give a call to Scanner Master at 1-800-722-6637. They're open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and they're also the sponsor of tonight's show and all of our shows thus far. So definitely check out Scanner Master online at scannermaster.com. We want to mention once again, we did talk a little bit about rail fanning and some train stuff. If you're interested in talking a little bit more about that or hearing more about it, definitely check out our next Train Aficionado live show. It'll be Monday, May the 3rd, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. We will have Danny Harmon of Distant Signals will be on the show. It'll be our first interview on that particular show, so we hopefully you join us then. Subscribe to the Train Aficionado YouTube channel as well. Definitely give us some love over there as well. We just wanted to remind you of that, and oops, let me go this way. We also have another interview coming up with Chuck of the National Communication Magazine. We'll be on our next broadcast Wednesday, April the 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Definitely tune into that. Should be a good interview. That'll be next week. If you're got a Roku or Apple TV device, you can watch us on the TV. Download the YouTube app, and you can watch us on the big screen. So definitely do that as well. And we can't stress enough to remind you to hit that subscribe button to our channel as well. You want to do that right now, or if you're watching this in the rebroadcast, do that. Hit the subscribe button. Give our video a thumbs up, a like. We would love that as well. So follow, like, and subscribe to the Scanner Guys social media as well: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Check out our blog, thescannerguyshow.com, thescannerguyshow.com. You can check out our blog, check out the website. We've got merch there for sale: hats, t-shirts, and coffee mugs. That'll help bridge the gaps to bring a little bit more great technology to bring these live shows to you each and every week. We enjoy doing this, and we hope you join us next week. And we also have a great show coming up at the end of the month. We're going to start working on that slideshow, which is all about forest fires and the Forestry Service. So that's definitely going to be a good topic of discussion as well. So hopefully you guys can join us then. Rich, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, that's pretty much it. I think we covered just about everything.
All right. So we hope you join us next week, and hit the subscribe button here and give us a thumbs up. Can't stress that enough. I'm Jonathan Higgins.
I'm Rich Carlson.
And until then, have a great week, and we'll catch you again next Wednesday.
Later, guys.
Good night.